very varied kind of expertise. But today, as on date, I have seen his passion in this biochar. I have seen his passion in this carbon credits, which is really a topic which we are not much concerned about because we are not reading much, we are not seeing much coverage in the newspapers. But it's really a very important topic, a topic which is really uh, concerns, and in the future, you see in times to come, it's going to be a very relevant topic. Let me just tell you, our agriculture universities are doing a lot of good things for less carbon emissions. They are doing a lot of work for this biochar. They are doing a lot of other kind of things for reducing this carbon. But sometimes we are not much aware that we can teach others, we can educate the farmers also, that how really they can be benefited through this carbon credits and how the universities can be benefited from this carbon credits. So all those things really we need to take care. So seeing all these things, this is really going to be a very important topic. Personally, I have seen his biochar interventions, and he has visited a couple of universities in our agricultural domain, and he is having a lot of connects with the universities, agricultural universities. And as I told in the beginning, he's passionate. So anytime if you just give a call to him, he's ready to visit your university. He's ready to come to your university. Raghavanji, thank you very much for agreeing to deliver this lecture for this allied group. And I am sure your lecture is going to be really of immense use. We have been conducting a lot of lectures connected with this education. Like the last time I conducted on academic bank of credit, on DigiLocker, on many other things. So education, but this is also part of the education. I did successfully the 75 lecture series of very eminent persons, which was highly acclaimed, which was highly appreciated by our all vice chancellors, our directors. For 75 continuous weeks, we conducted that. So it's a very good platform, online platform. And I think in today's lecture also, we will first have the lecture by Dr. Raghavendra, and which will be followed by Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hands. Presently, I have muted all of you, but then I will just unmute everybody so that you can raise your hands, you can ask your questions. So over to you, Dr. Raghavendra ji, and please start. Thank you.
Thank you, Agarwal sir. It's really my honor and privilege to be sharing, a few thoughts, on carbon credits with this eminent audience. I'm really privileged and really thankful to R.C. Agarwal sir for this opportunity. What I'll do, like sir said, maybe I'll take about 30-35 minutes, to kind of walk through and lay the foundations for carbon credits. I'm very much aware that
this meeting is being recorded.
I'm very much aware that, a lot of you might have already know enough about carbon credits, and some of this information might not be new to you, but perhaps as a collective, some information will be new to you and more information will be new to other people, right? So, and if you have questions, my one suggestion is there are three ways, right? One is as and when I'm speaking, if you have questions, please put it in the chat so that we can take it towards the end. Second thing is I have met a lot of vice chancellors in the past, when you had come to Kanha, and several of them said, why don't we work together? But I did not actually organize this. So there is going to be a small survey at the end, which I'm going to share. And if you want to take this relationship forward, request you to fill a survey. And you could also unmute at the end and ask questions, right? So with those few words, again, very thankful for this opportunity. And let me bring up my slides and walk through, for about 30 or 40 minutes, right? So carbon credits, right? And so in this lecture, in this talk, what we'll get is basically a foundation of carbon credits, how it works, how it does not work, what you can get carbon credits for, what you cannot get carbon credits for, and what are the types of carbon credits, And specifically, we're going to take a deep dive on one type of carbon credit, which is very high value, which is directly relevant to the agriculture domain, which is biochar, right? And I will take a little deep dive on that and also the effect of biochar on crops and agriculture. And again, any questions, please keep putting it in the chat box, right? So carbon credits, right? This can be a game changer in agriculture, right? More from an economic perspective, right? And as the slides go, you'll understand that better. So the whole story starts with what we call voluntary carbon markets, right? What is a carbon credit, right? And a market always has a supplier and a buyer. And this is very important, right? So the whole reason without buyers, okay, without customers, there is no market at all, right? So the whole thing starts with what's called a voluntary carbon market. Today, the governments have not mandated, or very little they've mandated, like, that companies need to be carbon neutral, right? Even the Paris and the COP agreements still talk about 2050, 2060, 2070 for countries and companies to become carbon neutral, right? Both work there. So right? Big companies, tech companies, and other large companies, right? They've taken it on themselves to say that I will voluntarily work towards, like, carbon neutrality, right? And where does it start? We all know that all companies expend energy and they have a carbon footprint, right? And this positive carbon footprint, positive carbon means, like, they're emitting more carbon dioxide than they're removing from the atmosphere, right? Because of their functioning, there is more more carbon dioxide, right? But some of them have declared voluntarily, I'm going to go towards carbon neutral or zero. How can this be possible, right? There are only two ways by which companies can reach carbon neutral. First is to machines more efficient so that there is lesser emissions, right? All this will go towards reducing emissions. But reducing emissions, however efficient you are, there will always be some emissions, right? And that emissions, how can they neutralize? And that's where, like, they talk about offsetting emissions. Offsetting emissions means that some other organization, it could be NGO in Africa, in India, or whatever, let's say they're planting trees as an example, right? And because of planting trees, it is absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Net, my organization, after becoming efficient, let's say emits about 200,000 tons of carbon dioxide, and I'm buying 200,000 carbon credits, and hence I'm neutral, right? So this is basically what really is the starting point for the market at all. But obviously, the first thing is that, like, the journey begins by companies. You can go to an ESG consultant and they will basically calculate your carbon footprint, right? So how does the whole emissions process itself work, right? And what is the mechanism to offset emissions, right? It starts with a unit of measure. We need a common unit of measure, and that is carbon credits, right? What is one carbon credit? One carbon credit is equivalent to 1 ton of carbon dioxide. Okay, what does it mean? What is 1 ton of carbon dioxide, right? Now, there are two things that can happen, right? These are words which are very, very foundational in carbon credits. The first is called avoidance. Avoidance means, like, let us say that I'm putting up a solar farm, right? And let's say I'm generating about 2.3 megawatts of electricity because of the solar farm. Now, if I had used, let's say, a coal or oil or whatever, I would have emitted maybe 100,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, right? By going in for solar, I'm avoiding the emission. I'm not adding to the emissions, right? So these are called avoidance carbon credits. Now, as against that, now you might say, okay, you can keep avoiding, but whatever methane, whatever carbon dioxide is already in the atmosphere, what happens to that? How do you make the world, like, give more fresh air, and how do you remove carbon dioxide? And this is where the carbon dioxide removal comes into play, right? And this means, like planting trees is a good example, right? Trees actually absorb carbon dioxide and actually makes the atmosphere more pure, right? So two things. One is avoidance. You're not creating a worse off environment. You're at least maintaining where it is. But removal is much more powerful, potent, because it is actively sucking out the negativity, or let's say, like, the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, right? Now, in avoidance, the most obvious is renewable energy, solar, wind power, and so on. There is also something called red projects, right? It's famous or infamous depending on how you see it, right? Let's say Amazon forest. Now, people, if they say that, hey, I'm going to cut it because I need to develop industry, but by not cutting it, if I've got, because I need money, but you give me money, okay, then I will not cut it. Okay, so it's a negative virtue, right? So those are called red plus projects, right? And there's been a lot of quote unquote, like, negative incidents, a lot of miscalculation, double counting in this area, right? It's created a lot of negativity around carbon credits. And of course, sustainable agriculture, right? Moving from wet and dry rather as against, like, in paddy, like, as against flooding, right? Reducing methane emissions, stuff like that. These are all avoidance. But when it comes to removal, okay, obviously the most obvious is agroforestry or afforestation, right? But there are also other things like biochar and enhanced rock weathering and so on, right? Now, one more nuance on removal is there is like one more term called permanence. Now, agroforestry or afforestation, there is no permanence. Now, why is that, right? Recently, you would have all seen in the news Los Angeles fires, right? These trees, which are huge, right? I mean, has grown over 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? Perhaps, like, if I had planted the Los Angeles forest, I can claim carbon credit for it, right? Saying that, like, this has sequestered about 80,000 carbon tons of carbon every year, and hence I could have sequestered that. I could have sold those carbon credits. But then the fires came, and what happened is all the carbon which is stored in the trees have gone back to the atmosphere. Okay, so there is a lack of permanence or impermanence in agroforestry or afforestation, right? And the carbon dioxide is sucked, photosynthesis, it's sequestered in the tree, but then it's not permanent because who knows, somebody will cut the tree, somebody, it might go up on fire. But there are other carbon credits which are called permanence, right? So what is permanence? If we can ensure and assure that the carbon dioxide which has been removed from the atmosphere is permanently sequestered in the soil, permanently, or oceans or wherever, right? And that it cannot be reversed. This carbon which is sequestered will not go back to the atmosphere and again pollute, right? So this is permanence. So obviously it's a one-way street. Permanent is a one-way street of sequestering carbon, and hence considered very, very valuable as against, like, other types of carbon removal which are impermanent, and definitely far more valuable than avoidance. Therefore, you look at the types of carbon credits and the choice of carbon credits and the price of carbon credits, right? The lowest is avoidance, which is renewable energy. You can say that we are almost in the decline phase of this industry, right? Over a period of time, I mean, this used to be millions of carbon credits which used to be put out, sold for $8, $10 a ton of carbon removed, which is equivalent to 80,000, 100,000, 8 million carbon credits or whatever. But today, most of the renewable energy carbon credits, like, are not even getting sold, or you get it for a few cents on the dollar, right? Because the industry is so well established that you don't need carbon credits to set up a solar farm. People are putting up gigawatt solar energy and wind energy, right? So this is in the decline phase. As against that nature-based solution, which is agroforestry and afforestation, right? Where you're planting trees, and as the plants grow, they start sequestering carbon over a 20, 30-year period, right? So this is like long lead time, right? Because it takes 20 years for a tree to mature, right, and reach its full capacity on carbon sequestration, right? The type of trees you plant will differ, okay, in terms of how much carbon it's able to sequester. A redwood, okay, would be much bigger. An Arjuna tree would be much bigger. Sesame would be much bigger. As against that, like, let's say you put a guava tree or a mango tree, right? It's much lesser, right? Shrubs, almost nothing. So there is always a risk of forest fires. A lot of monitoring and governance, particularly required in agroforestry. Here, the credits trade, if it's India, it's $8, $10. Like, in the US and the West, it's about $20. Okay, per carbon credit, which is per ton of carbon dioxide removed. As against that, you're talking about biochar. Okay, and we'll take a little deep dive in that, okay, in the next few minutes. This is in the growth phase. It's in the emerging phase. It's only about 2 years old since the biochar has been recognized as a form of sequestering carbon in the soil. Huge potential for scale. I will talk about it later in terms of why. Biochar is actually produced from farm residue, and India having one of the largest arable lands in the world. Okay, we generate about 500 to 600 million tons of farm residue. And statistics show that, like, close to 1/4 of it, 150, 160 tons, sorry, million tons of farm residue is burnt either in open fields or stubble burning in India. Now, if you can take the same and you can only work on it differently, instead of burning, you can get biochar, right? So there are many, many lead times. The beauty here is, as against 20 years here, you can even start generating carbon credits within a month or two. Okay. And there's almost no lead time, right? And there's an infinite potential here. And then there are other technologies, we'll not get into it, like direct air capture. Okay, if nature-based solutions, like, you need to work with 20,000 acres, 30,000 acres, 50,000 acres, right, before you can actually generate carbon credit, because the administrative process is very complex. As against it in biochar, the administrative process is not difficult, okay, and you can generate carbon credits, like, in a few months. Okay, direct air capture, but here you probably also, like, just need anywhere from 3 lakhs to 3 crores of capex. It's not much. Whereas in direct air capture, the equipments cost hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Very, very large industry scale equipment. Now, if you look at it, right, in terms of, since the audience here is iCars, okay, the first one, renewable energy, is largely driven by industry. Direct air capture is largely driven by industry. Here it's afforestation and agriculture. Biochar is quietly front and center, like, with agriculture, right? And it is something that we, the people on this call, can actually make a huge impact on, right? One question, right? If you might ask, right? If you're saying that removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is itself a climate service, okay, and should farming itself, growing paddy, growing wheat, growing, like, cotton, should that not be eligible for carbon credits, right? It would seem yes, but the actual answer is no. Okay, because farming is already there worldwide, and it is already absorbing enough carbon that's being thrown out into the atmosphere, right? And there is other term which is very important in carbon credit called additionality. Now, what is additionality? Additionality is like, let's say I'm a farmer, I'm growing, like, wheat and paddy and cotton year after year. Okay, so anyway, it's a profitable activity. In any way, I'm going to grow agriculture crops, right? So it is anyway, whatever sequestration is happening is already happening. So I'm not, whereas carbon credit is really as an incentive to have the farmer do an extra action that will actually help reverse or like combat climate change, right? And without this incentive, if you don't give carbon credit as an incentive, that guy will not do the activity, and hence the world will continue to get even more polluted, right? So additionality is a key important factor in determining whether carbon credits are eligible or not. And that's why farming is not eligible for carbon credits, right? But when you take, well, let's go to biochar a little bit, right? Now, let's say I'm growing cotton, I'm harvesting cotton, I'm selling cotton. Let's say I'm burning the stock. Now, instead of burning the stock, I take an additional effort, put some money, and convert that biomass or farm residue into biochar and put that in soil, which permanently sequestered it. That additional activity, yes, I can generate not only carbon credits, but it's very high value carbon credits. That's what we'll talk about in the session, right? So, specifically deep diving into biochar carbon credits, right? Now, there are two types of biochar carbon credits. One is called artisan, which means even a farmer can do it. A small entrepreneur can work with 100 farmers to do it. You can do a village level setup, like, with about 300, 500 farmers, like, set up a biochar facility, take the biomass, manufacture biochar, give it back. Or you can set it in 2 or 3 villages put together, right? Small scale, low tech, okay, village or farm level installation of biochar. The other one is industrial, right? You lug hundreds of tons of biomass to a city, wherever the equipment is there, factories are there. Okay, there's a very high tech installation. This costs lakhs, this costs crores, okay, industrial biochar. There is some level of emission in artisan biochar, but it is considered still valuable enough, like, where people are willing to pay. It's been recognized by international registries as something net you actually sequestering a lot of carbon, right? So even though some emissions are there, here you can actually eliminate emissions totally, right? And in this, okay, which only costs 3 to 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs to set up, okay, biochar is the only output. As against that, in industrial, biochar and syngases, okay, and the syngas again is basically a lean gas. It has carbon monoxide, it has methane, it has hydrogen, which is all combustible. And that you can use in turn, like, to burn and get thermal energy. You can produce power, like, you can condense into wood oil. Syngas itself, like, it has value, right? And hence this process is more efficient, but also very expensive, right? So these are two options, right? Now, there are standards that have emerged only in the last 2 years, 3 years, right? Carbon Standards International, which has almost become the de facto standard for artisan biochar, and Puro Earth, which has become the de facto standard for industrial biochar. Where standards like Vera, which is very, very popular in nature-based solutions, agroforestry and afforestation, have also come out with, and other standard registries have also come out with biochar standards. But let's say that these two were the first ones to get off the block, right? And Vera is still catching up. So with that, right, the next maybe 15 minutes or so, I'll just talk about biochar itself, right? I mean, what does biochar do other than generating carbon credit, right? And why is it relevant to us in agriculture, right? So how did biochar come about? Did somebody invent it, right? Actually, biochar is thousands of years old, right? And the story of biochar maybe 20 years back or whatever started with the right question, right? Somebody asked this question, right? Hey, Amazon forest, right? It's insanely thick and it's insanely dense, and the kind of fauna and flora is incredible, right? Nowhere in the world is there the level of fauna and flora in Amazon rainforest, right? ऐसा क्या किया है in South America, in Brazil or whatever, that this kind of fauna is growing, right? And there are a set of scientists in early 2000. Okay, they went and actually looked at it, right? And the soil color is black. Okay, it's very different from the other soils, even in neighboring around the Amazon forest, right? And they looked at it and look at the color change, right? And there's a professor, he started digging into the earth, and he found that up to 13 feet, right? And this soil is 4 to 5,000 years old, right? Up to 13 feet, the soil is black. And after that, the blackness goes away. Whereas here, the normal soil, there's almost no black at all, right? This black, okay, we all talk about soil organic carbon, right? And standards have been dropping from 1% to 0.5 is okay, 0.3 is okay, at least 0.2. I mean, kind of it's getting very poor standards, right? But in terra preta, as they call it, which is dark earth, right, in Amazon, there is almost 12 to 15% soil organic carbon and fixed carbon, right? It's so rich that they're saying trees which grow elsewhere, it grows 6 times higher here. And somebody's actually done some experiment taking this soil and putting it in other soil, mixing 20% of this soil with other soil. And they're saying that trees grow double the height, right? Today, unfortunately, humanity is so impoverished, right? That what people are doing in Amazon is digging the soil and selling it, right? Whereas, I mean, there is a theory that for thousands of years, there was a practice, cultural practice there, that after cooking in stoves, whatever little charcoal is left, they take and throw it, okay, into the ground. And thousands of years, this has been practiced for this carbon to get into the soil for 10, 15 feet, right? So this is a theory, right? And then once we know something works, we can reverse engineer it, right? So how to reverse engineer it so that it doesn't take thousands of years, but I can do it in 1 or 2 hours, right? And what is the raw material? The raw material is all biomass. And we have plenty of biomass, right? So instead of open field burning, we all know it's combustion, it's oxidation. And basically biomass is getting burnt and what's left is ash, right? And all the carbon goes to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and methane. And unfortunately, nitrous oxide also, if the biomass is wet, there's a lot of nitrous oxide emissions, right? And we know that methane is about 18 times more harmful or 20 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. And nitrous oxide is something like 250 times more harmful, right? So is there a way by which I can convert this biomass into carbon, which I can put back in soil, right? And this small kiln that you see here is an artisan kiln. It's been designed by the Ithaca Institute in Switzerland. Very effective. Okay, we've actually done analysis. I'm telling this based on scientific evidence. We have dug pits and created biochar in Heartfulness Institute. We've also done biochar using this kiln. We've taken the biochar, we've tested, and we found that in the same raw materials, okay, when I put it in a pit and I burn it in a particular way, it gives me 42%. It was giving me 42, 43% of carbon. The same wood when I put it in this kiln, and there is a science to how you layer it. And there's a lot of science, right? Because even though it seems very simple and both seem burning, there's a concept of a flame curtain, right? When the top layer, it's like cake, right? You keep building up biomass layer by layer, it burns, it starts dying down, ash starts forming, you put one more layer, one more layer. Now, let's just say the last layer is burning, right? Though there's an infinite amount of oxygen is there and the top layer is undergoing combustion, under that, right, under the top layer till the bottom, right, it's at 600 degrees Celsius. It's coal. And that coal is denied oxygen because there's something called a flame curtain. And the flame curtain does not allow oxygen to go to the lower levels, right? And hence you get carbon rich biochar or charcoal, right? And this is the kind of setup that we have made. Okay, we've set up 15 sites today. We're generating thousands of tons of carbon, charcoal, biochar, and applying to the soil. You see the blackness, right, of this. It is really black. And when we test it easily, right, with labor, with very, very low tech processes, we still get 60 to 80% carbon, which means that, like, it is significant because that carbon shows that this carbon, otherwise, if you had done open field burning, it would have gone to the atmosphere, right? Very simple amendments which can be done in the farm. Add Jivamrut, add mycorrhiza, you add, like, my biofertilizers, even NPK, okay, urea and so on, right? But definitely you add like, compost or farmyard manure. Okay, the more biofertilizers is better, because one of the values of biochar is to bring back biological life, microbial life in the soil, right? And this, if it's a raised bed, you can just when you put compost, you put biochar mixed with compost, right? Close it, 3 weeks later, you just do the sowing, zero changes. People say organic array, it's so difficult, there's so many processes to change. And biochar, the beauty of execution is that it's a basal application one time, 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever before sowing. And after that, you don't need to change any of your farming practices, right? Everything can be the same. And 2 or 3 points in terms of what's this biochar addition does to the soil, right? You see here, like, when looked under the electron microscope, a biochar is extremely porous, right? I mean, if I do cotton, the bulk density is something like 0.23, which means that it has so many pores, millions of pores, that 1 kilogram of biochar made from cotton, right, can absorb almost 3.5 liters of water, right? Because it's so porous and so light, and it takes up a lot of space, right? Now, 2 or 3 data points, right? Once you put biochar in the soil, we recommend about 1 ton an acre. Okay, and definitely saturated biochar with Jivamrut or other biofertilizers mixed with compost. Now, what it does is it brings back biological life, because carbon is a building block for biological life, right? And the other thing is that 1 kilogram of biochar has a surface area, and you can measure it in an electron microscope, for about 100 acres. Now, imagine in 1 acre, we are adding 1,000 kilos, right? So you're effectively adding 100,000 acres, okay, of carbon surface. Now, when it's inoculated with microorganisms, and you have compost and it feeds on compost, there's an explosive growth of microbial life in the soil. Fertility comes back. It starts fixing nitrogen. It starts solubilizing, nutrients. Okay, making nutrients available to the plants, right? The nature's process starts kicking in, and whatever you do, you continue to do, right? But it kind of lends a helping hand, okay, to see benefits, right? We've seen, like, really good increases in growth, yield, income, okay, and also in terms of, like, reduced water, because the physicochemical properties, the porosity, it ensures that, like, water is absorbed, and when the soil gets dry through capillary effect, there's a slow diffusion, okay, of moisture from the biochar into the soil, right, keeping the soil moist, right? And the other thing is, once you put it in soil, it remains in soil for thousands of years, thousands. And what that means is, like, compost ho, जीवामृत ho, like, urea ho, DAP ho, अरे हर साल हर season मुझे डालना पड़ता है. Whereas, like, biochar, I put it once in soil, it remains for thousands of years. My son, his son, my great grandson, right? I mean, the soil becomes permanently fertile, right? I mean, there are 200,000 publications on biochar, okay, in the world, 220,000 with 34,000 meta studies, right? And yet, it's a matter of surprise for me that actual implementation models at scale are yet to come up, right? And that's where, like, organizations and eminent institutions like ICAR, like, take notice of biochar and really see what we can do collectively to promote the adoption, right? And really see at scale, like, how biochar scales up. Last few thoughts here. Sorry. So, biochar is multifaceted. So, I've talked about increase in yield and naturally income. It reverses climate change. The farmer doesn't care. But if in the process, like, the world also benefits, why not? not just improves soil fertility, but permanently improves soil fertility. And at the low-tech level, there's an opportunity for rural entrepreneurs to emerge, right? And Daji, who heads Heartfulness Institute, right? It is his vision that in every village, Modi ji had come here and they had a conversation. And one thing that Daji mentioned is that in every village, we should create a youth or a woman, okay, to run a biochar business so that all the farm residue in that village can be collected, converted to biochar and put back in the village itself, right? And they also earn money, right? The soil benefits, the farmer benefits, the world benefits, right? And stress resilience, right? In our little experiment last year, which I'll get into details of, we've seen that, even with 5/8 the water, which is with a 37% drop in water given through drip, still, the soil remains more moist, right? So water scarcity is coming. And biochar could also be one of the solutions, to allow plants to grow and grow well with lesser levels of water. From a climate change perspective, okay, there's a international panel on climate change, in their 2022 assessment. They had assessed that biochar alone, because the amount of farm residue that the world generates is incredible, right? Plants are already doing this work of absorbing carbon. All that we need to do is through biochar ensure it remains sequestered in soil and doesn't burn and go back to the atmosphere, right? 2.6 gigatons is significant, right? In terms of net, okay, it might be a very high percentage of what's the net emissions, right? uh, there are a lot of studies which say that if I put biochar in the soil, let's say 1 kilo, 25% of it will degenerate over 350 years. The rest of it remains in the soil for at least 1,000 to 5,000 years, right? So there is a lot of permanence, to biochar. It's very unique in this angle, right? So we've talked about carbon credits. We've talked about what biochar is. What is the effect that biochar has, okay, on plant growth and afforestation, right? Now, many of you might have come. This is Kanha Shanti Vanam. It's absolutely a green oasis today, but all this is now, right? And why Kanha has become a green oasis? One of the key ingredients is biochar, right? Because just about 8 years back, Kanha looked like this. Absolutely barren. Water table was 1,200 feet below ground. There were hardly any vegetation, 100, 200 trees in about 1,500 acres. And agriculture had come to a complete stop, right? When we started working in 2016, the first thing that came up were the roads and then a few lakes at the lowest levels, rainwater harvesting pit every 50 feet, and the water started getting charged. And this is how it looked about a year and a half back, right? I mean, today there are lakhs of trees. It's completely green, right? I mean, we even have a rainforest growing here, right? You look at the soil, very poor soil. Okay, actually, nutrients are lacking in the soil, and even soil organic carbon is very poor. And yet, on this kind of land, these kind of trees have come up in 5 to 6 years, right? I mean, there's definitely something right that we've done in the intervention, right? And one of the key elements, it's not the only element, but one key element is biochar, right? And the one beauty, incredible thing is we've grown a small Amazon kind of rainforest here with evergreen trees, 100 plus evergreen species growing in a small space of about 0.4 acres. How is it possible? We've created rain guns, okay, which basically simulate rain twice a day because there's a semi-arid land. But the soil has been fortified, 5 feet below. There's a 6-inch black soil layer. Then, we put biochar, we put neem paste, we put polymers, polygels, and other ingredients like compost, vermicompost, and again put biochar on the top before putting the topsoil back, right? And in 5 years, this entire forest is only 5 years old. We have about 7 such rainforests here in Kanha. And now, because we've perfected this, we are building such rainforests in the heat of Delhi, okay, in Jamnagar, okay, in every forest, there's always a small rainforest that we're building, right? It's more a demonstrator that, in spite of everything, it is possible with human ingenuity that we can, okay, make an effort to reverse the environment, right, and create a better world, right? So I'm just going to pause, for one thing, right? If you have any questions, right? I mean, or you would like to connect with us to partner on biochar. I just want to get more organized about this. You can go to menti.com or you can scan the QR code, right? Menti.com. And there's a code 59471085. I'll again mention it. Menti.com. 5947 1085. What I'm also going to do is on the chat, okay, I'm going to give a link. And if you click on this link, right, you can put your questions. You can also ask questions and also say that if you would like to partner with Heartfulness Institute, in what way, right? At least we get a list of 10-20 people and we will definitely be in touch with you, and take it forward, right? I have a few more minutes, and after that, I will open up for questions. So what we've talked about is afforestation, right? Today in every afforestation project, Heartfulness works on about 38 afforestation projects. We use biochar while planting every single tree and shrub, right? And this is standard for us. In terms of agriculture, we started some small scale trials, okay, back in 2023 December, right? And in our very poor soil, we grew amaranthus, we grew vegetables. And you see, when no biochar was put, everything else was put, all other nutrients were put. This was the growth, a little biochar, more biochar, right? You can obviously see, that it's a night and day difference, and this really encouraged us, right? So amaranthus, which is leafies, we saw 133% growth. I'm not saying these are research trials, these are replicable, but these are trials which we did in our backyard, right? This is what really got us inspired and started moving forward, right? Vegetables like cluster beans, we saw 74%. Okay, tomato, it got 48%. Again, very poor soils respond better to biochar than, let's say, already fertile soils, right? Since we had very poor soil, perhaps we got Dhamaka results. I'm not saying like this is replicable. I'm not saying anything, right? This is just data points, right? And when we actually took out the crop, the amaranthus, right? You could just see the size of leaves, the green, how green it is. Okay, the depth of the roots. Okay, and this was the harvest, right? All the same size plots. Okay, but these are the kind of additions. Okay, these are the kind of quantities, right? That 130% increase, right? But this was only a first trial, right? But a little more scientific. Okay, we saw germination rate increase, and we saw the vegetative growth, right? I mean, without biochar, it was like a person running a marathon, getting slow off the blocks and jogging along, right? Whereas with biochar, it's like Usain Bolt, getting off the blocks, right? Night and day difference. I mean, this is 22nd day. Modi ji was coming here. So we did all this analysis and put up posters on day 21. And in 21 day, okay, the a 1 month old tomato plant, which was 10 centimeters when we put in, okay, had grown to about 32 centimeters, whereas in control, it was only about 13 centimeters or so. Flowering comes about 10 to 12 days ahead. And the same thing we observed in cotton as well, extensive field trials, right? I'm bringing up a slide on that, right? And because of early flowering and also flower drops were lesser, the number of fruits also was higher. This is tomato, right? But I'll talk about cotton, right? Because this is a trial. Okay, it is not a scientific study at all, right? But this, we partnered with Central Institute of Cotton Research. Okay, YG Prasad sir and Manigandan, who's a soil scientist, we've been working very closely with him, and he gave us guidance in terms of how to do proper trials, right? And you look at the control plot and biochar plot, right? Half acre of control, half acre of biochar, right next to each other in 144 farmers, right? 74 farmers in Gujarat and 70 farmers in Madhya Pradesh, right? And you see the vegetative growth. This is about day 90 or 100. And this is at hip level and this is at head level, right? And the data points, I'm happy to share this, that we saw then, cotton yield across 144 farmers. Now, there's a wide variety of soil, types of irrigation, agroclimatic zones, organic cotton and conventional farming, rain-fed versus drip irrigation versus flood irrigation. So you have all kinds of soil types. So, and soil test results, right? So we have almost 600 pieces of data for every single farm, right? And that's what we've collected. And really, right, I mean, I should thank CICR and Dr. Manigandan, for the guidance and support at every step. Okay, not only is the yield higher, but you look at the details, right? I mean, plant height is higher, vegetative growth, number of sympodial branches on which cotton grows is higher, length of branches is higher, number of balls is higher, and the soft narrative. One farmer, right, when we went with Dr. Manigandan, and he said that, अरे देखो मैं तो हाफ एकड़ कंट्रोल हाफ एकड़ बायोचार दोनों में ड्रिप डाल रहा हूँ. इधर कंट्रोल में 2 बार डालता हूँ हफ्ते में, twice a week, and I put 8 hours, right? Whereas in control I'm only putting for 5 hours, and yet I find on the third day my control plot has gone dry and kadak, whereas my biochar plot, it retains more moisture. Naturally, when the moisture is retained because of biochar, because it's porous, right? The moisture remains soft, the roots grow deeper, de-weeding is easier. Okay, and when the roots grow deeper, right, I think magic happens, right? And the biology, okay, once you mix Jivamrut or biofertilizers, and we tried with both Jivamrut as well as industrial biofertilizers, right? And the difference is significant because, the soil is better. I'm sorry, the plant is better, has better growth, and we also saw flowers come 10 to 12 days early, and the pest resistance. This is incredible, huh? That though the control and the treatment are next to each other, several farmers reported that there was less incidence of pests, in the trial plot, right? I personally sat with about 25 farmers in Sabarkanta, and somebody local Gujarati told me if that area people are telling good, it's very difficult place to get through to the farmers. But all of them, 20 farmers, right? They all took turns. About 12 of them spoke up. They all said, "Arey, 20-25 तक का तो है ही है. But last time you gave it to me only for half acre. I have 5 acres. How will you give me 5 acres?" Right? It's very encouraging. I'm not saying that that this is established science or anything like that, huh? But it at least should encourage us to actually dig deeper and go a little forward, right? So my summary from the 144 farm trials, right, is because it retains water and nutrients. There's a lower water requirement and increased soil moisture, which means de-weeding is easy, better vegetative growth, but much more important is deeper root growth. We've actually taken the size of roots. Also, okay, we've actually taken soil test before and after. The studies are going on. And we've also taken cotton quality, because numbers might be 25%. What happens to cotton quality? We've also taken cotton quality, and that's also being tested as we speak, right? Earlier flowering, better pest resilience, and higher crop yield and income, right? But for me, the best thing is, okay, even in the first season, right? They say that in the third year onwards you get very, very good result, but this is first year. But the best thing is the residual effect. The soil is also supposed to be better, right? Because of biochar and because of increased biological activity, you get more soil organic carbon. That we're also now seeing in terms of what is the effect it's having on the second and third season. Could be Thor, Dollar, Gehu, or whatever, right? Last couple of things. So it also allows, we've established 15 units. We're trying to evolve a rural entrepreneurship model. One person, youth or women group or whatever, can work in 3-4 villages and generate biochar and sell it, or even give it free thanks to carbon credits, right? And this is where, carbon credits and biochar, the marriage is beautiful, right? Let's say today, a very, very one way of doing low tech biochar, it costs about 10 or 12,000 rupees. There might be other ways of manufacturing, even 6,000, 5,000 rupees also, right? But that's still too much, right? If I have 5 acres, even 5,000 rupees, 25,000 rupees farmers, it's difficult. Whereas, can we do this, right? Just look at this equation, right? It takes 25,000 rupees to manufacture biochar. But if I can monetize it and let's say I get 20,000 rupees of that, or whatever be the number, right? Then the cost to the farmer becomes 5,000. Or even let's say other people, entrepreneurship needs money, this registry needs money, let's say 12,000. Even then the cost comes from 25,000 down to 12,000, right? So instead of the government providing fertilizer subsidy, can we use carbon credits, to actually subsidize the cost of biochar in the hands of farmers? And can that drive adoption, right? This is the key social impact model that Heartfulness is working towards, right? Entrepreneur also makes money, right? But for me, what we are looking at is, with scale, the cost of biochar should go down. Let's say carbon credits remains the same, which means the cost to the farmer should go down even further, driving higher adoption and also improving entrepreneurs' margin, right? So this is the, see, I'm not an agronomist. I don't come from agriculture, right? But I'm come from a consulting background. What I'm doing is working with organizations, some of the ICAR universities, working with execution partners, who have access to lakhs of farmers. I understand carbon credit, Heartfulness, horticulture has become a carbon credit agency. And collectively, right, can we make this magic equation work and can we drive scale, right? This is actually the mission for my life, okay? And me and my small team, I joke, but it's actually serious, right? I think we're 24/7 on biochar, right? And we say that we drink, eat, and sleep biochar. This is all that we do, right? And our story, we've used biochar in Heartfulness and Kanha for the last 8 years. And I think in all our afforestation project, the results are there to see. And we started in biochar and agriculture only in 2023, right? There was one Dr. Sai Bhaskar Reddy, very, very graciously came, he supported us, okay, to get us started, right? And we generated about 300 tons of biochar, like, in the first year, generated a few carbon credits, sold a few carbon credits. This year, with the help of our partners, we're scaling about 15x. We are looking to generate about 4,000 tons of biochar, 8,000 tons of carbon credit. And we will also install our first industrial biochar equipment in this year, okay, 2025, right? When you all come to Kanha, okay, this is something we're just launching. We're waiting for this to be inaugurated next month. This is a biochar center of excellence, right? It will have plots where you can see the impact of biochar growth on crops. It'll have a farmer training facility. It'll have a biochar processing facility, okay, with Jeevamrut and biofertilizer mixing, right? And it will also, like, have I'm sorry, I don't know what happened. Yeah, the first one is where you'll see with biochar and without biochar. This is a farmer training facility. 60 to 100 farmers can get trained, entrepreneurs can get trained. And then there'll be a processing facility for shredding, granulating, inoculating, storage, okay, and shipments. And then will be a artisan biochar facility with place for storage, right? We also plan to put together an industrial pyrolysis unit, okay, but that's kind of in the works. It might take a year or two. So this is the biochar center of excellence we've built here in Kanha, right? And we're hoping with partnership with ICAR that we will do more and more research, like, and we'll be able to take this forward, right? My last slide, right? So this is not just a lecture, but I'm really looking forward to work with ICAR universities and organizations and individual scientists, like, who are deep into biochar already. Okay, there are certain things that we can bring in from the heartfulness side, right? I mean, our passion, and we're deeply invested. We can generate carbon credits for the biochar you are generating. We can help you also develop in such a way with the DMRV that we can generate carbon credits for you. Access to a network of 3 million farmers, okay, through our connections with the industry. Today, Heartfulness has access to about 30 lakh farmers. We're also running an Ekatma Abhiyan, right? Going to villages and teaching meditation, right? We touched 40,000 villages this last year. In 8 states, we're touching about 125,000 villages. And which means that we also want to integrate biochar into our Ekatma Abhiyan, right? So access to markets is something, like, that I think Heartfulness is a force to reckon with. And we've created an incubation center. I mean, that's what Kanha Shanti Vanam is. We run 200 initiatives, a lot in environment. And we do both artisan and industrial, right? So this is what we bring to the table. Access to markets and carbon credits and knowledge, like, consolidated in one place. If what can we offer? How can we partner? If any of the agri universities would like to set up a small biochar center of excellence, you want to generate carbon credits, like, for the biochar you're already creating, you need a DMRV, okay, which is a software in which you track the biochar production. If there is crop specific research, like we already partnered with CICR, it could be with sugarcane, with wheat, like, with paddy. If you want to do a impact of biochar, very happy to collaborate with you. One ask of the larger biochar ICAR leadership is, like, we have organic farming, many farming practices, SOPs, by KVKs in place, right? How can we develop SOPs for biochar? Today, there's nothing, right? It's us, all these small biochar players saying itna dal do, aisa dal do, like, but that is not right. We need, like, the apex organization like ICAR to actually do trials in various crops, like, and depending on type of soil, come out with SOPs, right? And this is something that we would love to partner, because all our implementations and trials, we can provide the data, and if you can analyze it, can come with SOPs. We can help you monetize and generate carbon credits. Internship opportunities, right? As we scale, okay, if students want to work on biochar, we would invite them, and other environment projects also, right? And the last one is maybe, like, there's a thought, like, that we can actually run a entrepreneurship event. And good students, like, with a lot of passion to do something, we can also train them to become biochar rural entrepreneurs, right? So these are my thoughts. And with this, like, Daji's vision is that, like, this is something really nature's gift to mankind, right? It's a circular economy. Nature's giving the farm residue. You convert that to biochar, put it in the soil, right? And karte karte seekh jayenge, right? We will learn more. And our vision is to set up a biochar unit, okay, in every village of India, right? Today, it's only a promise and it's only a potential. Okay, it's not a reality. But how can we work together to convert that promise to a reality, right? This is our life's mission, and we hope that, like, we can partner with you and to see how we can take it together, right? So thank you for this opportunity. Like, I'm sorry it's been a little bit of a monologue, but if there are questions, you can put it in Menti. You can also give your institution details if you want to partner and ask questions also. I'll pause there. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raghavendran, for this very basic talk. I think all elementary aspects you have covered, and you have taken to a very high level, explaining this biochar, carbon credits, and what kind of carbon credits exist. Everything I think you have covered. Very educative and very informative talk. And my colleagues who have joined, I think they have put some questions also in the chat box, but they have been replied already by your colleagues.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, and thanks to your colleagues for responding to that.
Yeah.
But I will just request if some of my colleagues they have any question to ask.
Yeah.
We can allow them to ask the questions. Please.
Sure, please.
You can raise your hand or you can just unmute yourself.
साहब इस डॉक्टर सुनील कुमार HAU हिसार सर.
Yes.
यस सर, इसमें यही था जैसे अभी इन्होंने बताया कि जैसे फार्मर अपना जो ये यूज कर रहा है बार बार, जैसे ये कह रहे हैं कि क्या नाम 3-4 बार कल्टीवेट करता है, 3-4 वो कुछ करता है. अगर मान लो वो उसको 0 पे ले जाए तो उसका कुछ कार्बन क्रेडिट बनेगा क्या? अगर वो 0 चीजें करता है, सारी चीजें उसमें ट्रैक्टर चलाए ना, इरिगेशन भी ना दे, वो ऐसी
Zero delays.
नहीं मैडम, नहीं सर, वो ना ऐसी क्रॉप ग्रो करे जो कम पानी की जरूरत हो, उसको कोई ज्यादा ऐसा
तो वही होगा, वो कंजर्वेशन एग्रीकल्चर की बात कर रहे हैं ना आप?
हाँ जी, हाँ जी, कंजर्वेशन एग्रीकल्चर के ऊपर ऐसे जैसे मान लो आज वो 100 लीटर यूज कर रहा है, क्या नाम है, फॉर एग्जांपल अपना डीजल, और इन प्रैक्टिस करने के बाद उसका 100 डीजल 0 हो जाए तो ये वो
बताया था कि वो जो उस तरह के भी एक कार्बन क्रेडिट है, आप बताएंगे थोड़ा सा और?
नहीं सर, फिर उसको वो 100
समझ गया, आपका क्वेश्चन आ गया समझ में.
हाँ जी, हाँ जी.
सुन लीजिए आप आंसर.
तो वो सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर, रीजनरेटिव एग्रीकल्चर में आता है. फॉर एग्जांपल, द मोस्ट कॉमन, okay, which many people are pursuing is in rice, because there's flooding, irrigation that happens, instead alternate wet and dry, उसपे पानी बहुत कम यूज करता है, and because of that, एटमॉस्फेयर को भी मदद मिलता है क्योंकि मीथेन एमिशंस कम होता है. So उसके वजह से कार्बन क्रेडिट्स मिलता है. But the thing is, okay, a lot of people are doing it at scale, but the amount of carbon credits that you get is itna. Okay, you do for 1 year. I don't know the exact number. Maybe you will get 1 carbon credit per acre, right? Which is maybe $10 or whatever. As against it, let's say you get here, you can get much larger carbon credits, right? And the value is also much higher, right? So this is so here. But that is also there, but that's a different type of carbon credit and the value is smaller. Whereas here you can get immediate results, right? So these are two different things.
But if some of the scientists and some farmers, they are looking for calculation of their carbon credits, how much they have saved. So which is the agency which can help them?
Yeah. Sir, this is where carbon credits is a funny business, right? Every type of carbon credit, the registry is different, right? If you want to do agroforestry, Vera or Gold Standard is the organization to go with. If you do artisan biochar, like, then CSI is the organization to go with. If you're doing industrial biochar, you go with Pure Earth, right? Rock weathering, okay, many of them have, but there's always a leading registry, right? So for regenerative agriculture, I think Vera works well, but there are a few other registries also. So these carbon credits, it's like currency, right? A dollar is worth much higher, a rupee is less, and a ruble is much less, right? So carbon credits, they all talk about, one unit, but the value is very different. And the registry which is recognizing this carbon credit also comes from very different registries. Yeah. So it depends on the type, you need to go to the right registry.
Good. Yes. Anybody else?
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, good afternoon. This is Dr. Sailaja, sir, from Anglo, Acharya Engineering and Agriculture University.
Yes.
Sir, you have been applying biochar, and the visible effects are also very clear, sir. Have you started measuring the carbon sequestered or carbon credits generated, sir?
Carbon credits we've generated, right? So last year, like I said, we generated 400 carbon credits. We sold some. This year, we've generated more than 1,000 carbon credits. But carbon sequestration in soil or doing the soil test before and after, we've just taken the soil samples from our farmers and the results are not yet out. Okay, it'll take a few months. And in terms of what is the residual effect on the soil and what is the impact on the subsequent crop with no amendment in the secondary, so first time ek bar dala, dusra, teesra, like but if you're generating 100 tons of biochar, then definitely it is something that is worth it, right? Then you should generate carbon credits because at $100, okay, even let's say net, let's say you get $80, right? $80 into 100 carbon credits is worth $8,000, right? Which is about 5 lakhs maybe, or a little more, say 6-7 lakhs, right? So it's worth it, right? At least you understand how to do this, and then you can start scaling up. Yeah.
And another one more clarification I need.
Ji.
And in your experiments also, you are adding around 40 tons of biochar per hectare.
No.
Square meter you have given 4 kg like that.
No, sir. No, ma'am. Okay, we don't add 40 tons. There are some papers which talk about ultra high concentrations of biochar to shock the system. In our experiments, we've tried we've talked about what do you call? I'm talking about not the field experiments. See, those are pot experiments. That's a small trial experiment, right? In our biochar field, cotton, we've added roughly about 1 ton of biochar per acre. Okay, let's say you add about 1 ton of compost or 2 tons of compost on top of it, you mix it, apply it to the soil, right? So that is what we are applying in actual field trials, right? Pot trials, you do anything, it doesn't matter, right? But it only gives you an idea for us to learn. Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah.
good afternoon. Can you hear me, sir? My name is Murli Gopal.
Hanji.
Yeah, I'm from Central Plantation Crops Research Institute, Kasargod.
Yeah.
And for maybe more than 12 years or 15 years, I have been working on production of biochar from coconut husk, coconut petioles, and now cocoa pod husk and everything, sir.
Yeah.
And we have been using earlier a very simple drums, single drum that was developed from CIAE Bhopal. And to farmers level, it was very good. Now we are going for the twin barrel, twin compartment, this thing, and with a chimney on top, sir.
Yeah, we've done this before also.
So, but yet what we find is that there is a lot of production of smoke, and it kind of gives a perception that though you're doing something good by production of biochar, the smoke perception is not very good with the people. They think you're polluting the environment. How can I reduce it, sir?
Yeah. So very good. So we ourselves, started with pits in the ground. Then we did a single drum. Then we did a double barrel. Then we kind of we took out the smoke, and because we also saw smoke coming out, we dug a very big pit in the ground and we put some scrubbers to actually scrub the smoke coming out. So what we are doing with Kontiki, which is the Ithaca Institute, right? You please look up Ithaca Institute, okay, Switzerland. And there are some really good papers, there are really good studies, published papers, right, which say that there are so this layering method of a Kontiki, right, some smoke comes, right, but if you follow the process right, which is moisture in the biomass should be less than 20%, and you should layer it properly. Okay, if we layer it properly, we see, and you should not add too much of biomass or too little, right? And if you do that and ensure a flame curtain is there, almost you will see smokeless. And the other difference, Dr. Murli, is that When we used to do it in drums, okay, it'll take an hour and a half or two, you'll get 12 kilograms of biochar. Whereas here in one run, okay, you get about 70, 80 kilos or 120 kilos. Now we've created a bigger one where we are even getting quarter ton per firing. See,
Oh,
we got to scale it. Okay. And so carbon credits also you generate faster. It takes the same 1 hour, right? And the yield is higher because in the double barrel drum, what happens is part of it is completely burnt to ash and the other one gets indirectly heated to biochar, right?
yes.
Whereas here, so both in terms of size, scale, and now, we're also seeing even there are organizations which have put a chimney on top, right, and scrubbing the gas, even though it allows a little gap, right? So a lot of small innovations are happening, right? And this is where, the engineering side of ICAR, right? I mean, like PAU and other organization institutions, we would love to work to really see there is definitely a perception issue because they बोल रहे हैं अरे उधर भी जला रहे हो इधर भी जला रहे हो उधर भी थोड़ा बहुत smoke आ रहा है इधर थोड़ा smoke आ रहा है. So we have to break this perception and we can definitely work with engineering methodologies to see how we can not just remove the perception but actually reduce. Okay.
Yeah, and all the basic things which you have mentioned, we have very nicely found out that we mix coconut leaf vermicompost with biochar. We are priming the biochar with certain microbial consortia, as you have mentioned, and we get very, very good results. Only thing is, as you said, scaling up and reaching to the farmers. It should be like we want the farmers to, exactly as you said, it's a circular economy which should be there with all the farmers. And the quantum of biomass which we generate from coconut and cocoa and areca nut is huge, lignin rich, and the carbon that is there in the biochar is also more recalcitrant than carbon that can be made from any other type of waste.
Right.
So we have excellent candidate for soil health as well as environmental sustenance efforts. But yes, we need some guidance. We need really some good.
Dr. Murali, I will just suggest you that whatever work you have done, so you yourself are saying, let us take it to the farmers. But until something is scaled up, something is extended to the farmers, it remains only in the pilot stage. And I think this Heartfulness Institute are doing wonderful work for making the model successful for the adoption by the farmer.
So we have already.
We need such kind of collaborations, such kind of really the interactions or discussions. So that is the purpose of this particular presentation.
Sir, already we have installed few of our units within the farmers. But as I said, only thing they have a perception, okay, it is also producing smoke. In fact, 2 weeks back, we had done an AQI analysis for our system. And surprisingly, we find that it's well below the AQI air quality index that Kerala, prescribes. So there is smoke, but it does not produce that much amount of particulate matter. But the perception is something which we want to.
Sir, please do put you please fill in a Menti survey I've sent. I'd like to get in touch with you, and any of the, my request to the participants, right? I mean, ICAR is the organization, right? I know a lot of scientists are working in biochar for 10, 12 years. See, our strength is, one is passion, but the other one is in terms of how do you take and scale it, right? But specific science, specific research, we have a lot to learn from you, whether be it coconut, be it cotton or whatever. So I think this can be a fruitful partnership where the ICAR Institute does the deeper research and whatever is already the findings, how can some organization like Heartfulness take it out and run it at scale with farmers, right? Because then two hands come together, we clap and we can really take this and regenerate the soils of India. That is something that we really want to partner on, right? So like you, Dr. Murli, right? I'm sure there are 10, 20 people here who work on biochar, but for us to really get organized and work with you, so please just fill out a Menti survey. That's again a request from my side.
I will do it, sir. And very interestingly, we are working with NIT Suratkal in Karnataka to use biochar as a component of cement material to improve the cement properties, sustainable cement, bio-cement. We are working with them.
Thank
We are
you.
very
Thank you,
good.
Dr. Mulya. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, sir.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Shripad Divekar from Postgraduate Institute of ABM, affiliated with VNMKV Parbani. Sir, I have some questions.
Yeah.
If we set up a small biochar production unit in our agriculture universities, can
Right.
it create a self-employment opportunities for students?
Yes, you can. I would love to work with you on that. It'll take a little cost to set up a unit. See, our Biochar Center of Excellence that we've set up here, okay, we've created, obviously with CSR funding, okay, we've created one facility, right? We would love ICAR Institute a team to actually come and see this. And over the next year, what we're going to do is you can create a smaller version of this, or a version of this in your university also. And we will work with you in terms of how we can actually start in terms of how to create rural entrepreneurs, right? That's why we've set this up. And we can work with you, also partner with ICAR institutions to also do this training of rural entrepreneurs in the agri universities itself, right? And we can see in terms of how this can be scaled. We would love to partner. Yeah.
Sir, I am Dr.
Is
Beg.
there any government scheme that promotes biochar production, and how can farmers benefit from it?
Sorry, there was some some. Can you repeat, please?
Is there any government scheme that promotes biochar production, and how can farmers benefit from it?
Oh, there is no government scheme for this. Only this is some kind of thing where really we need to help the farmers. It doesn't require much cost. Okay, only small units. I think the kind of unit which they have developed maybe costs around 25,000 rupees.
50,000, 75,000.
50,000 rupees, which is just nothing. Very small scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, as
Hello,
of
sir. I am Dr. Hello, sir.
how to work with you on it?
Please just fill a Menti survey so that we know who's doing what, and we'll definitely reach out to you. Yes. Yeah.
Sir,
Yes.
I am Dr. Beg.
Yes. Doctor.
I am Dr. Beg from Vasantra Naik Marathwada Agricultural University, Parbhani, sir.
Yes.
I am Director of Research.
Yeah.
Sir, recently we have brought around 1,000 hectares of acacia forest into cultivation under the leadership of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Indramani, sir.
Yeah.
Still, we are having 500 hectares of acacia forest and plants. Shall we
Okay.
convert into biochar? This is the first question. And
Yeah.
second is, sir, we are having around 8 to 10 lakh hectares of cotton in our region, Marathwada region.
Yeah.
2 to 3 lakh hectares of pitch and pea. So farmers need some this byproduct from their after harvesting. So this is, I think, most important.
Yes.
Yes.
Marathwada is a
Yes.
huge, right? I think for cotton. I mean, Marathwada, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Odisha, wherever cotton is there, cotton is fantastic, right? And
Yes.
so definitely, yes. Acacia and other things like, see, there is a requirement, because we're talking about sustainability, right? We cannot cut trees to create biochar, right? That defeats the purpose, right? But if trees are anyway having to be cut, for example, even in Kanha, okay, there was Canocorpus, which we had to cut, right? Because there was a government order that it's actually harming respiratory systems. So if you have to cut because of a government regulation, yes, that can be converted to biochar. But I wouldn't advocate any kind of cutting trees like to create biochar. There's enough and more farm residue. And we would love to work with you to see how we can see our strength is in organizing things to create a systematic model of entrepreneurship and employment and activity, right? Agricultural activity. And there, I think we've got all the tools that it takes to work with you. Yeah.
We are very much happy to sign MOU with you if you permit, sir.
Absolutely. Meaning, just please fill out the Menti survey. I'm sorry I'm repeating it, but I did meet several vice chancellors last time. I took some cards, but I could not really follow up. That's why I thought if you can fill out the Menti survey, we will know whom to contact. We'll definitely get in touch with you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, next. Anybody else?
Sir, namaste, sir. I'm Dr. K. the Director of Industrial and International Program, Dr. YSR Horticulture University, Andhra Pradesh.
Yes.
And very nice presentation. And sir, one thing I want to ask that biochar you worked on amaranthus and tomato crops. Have you calculated in cost benefit? Any idea of
so cost benefit? I mean, so the cost benefit, I would think is more applicable. Okay, these are trials, okay, farm trials, field trials, I can't do that. But let us say on an average, right, we've got about, let's say 17 to 32%. Average is about 25% yield growth in cotton. That's the one trial at scale, right? And if you assume that, back of the envelope I'm talking about, right? 60,000 rupees, let's say, is what a farmer gets out of cultivating cotton. And if you're increasing 25%, that's 15,000 rupees, right? Now, what we've given to them is half a ton of biochar, okay? Because the model is still not economically, it's not been fine tuned. Let's say last year it cost about 12,000 rupees, per ton. आप amendment, जीवामृत, transport और सब डाल के 15,000 rupees भी लगा दीजिए. You're talking about 7,500 rupees of input leading to a 15,000 rupees of output, right? So it's viable. Okay. The second thing I'll say is this 7,500, not everything has been used in the 15,000, right? Because it remains in the soil. It is also going to give results in the subsequent years, right? So at the outset, sir, data is not too much, but 144 trials, across 3 districts, meaning I think it is significant. We've got a lot of detailed data. Analysis and publications work is yet to happen. At the outset, sir, my summary, okay, is yes, at the farmer level, the unit economics works out. However, whether the farmer will be able to spend that 10,000, for the 5 acres, 50,000, whether he has money or he's expecting credit, government is not supporting. So because of that, it might fail, right? And so we've got to see, I think the mission that we have in front of us is, it's costing 12,000 rupees. How can I make it 5,000? How can I make it 3,000, right? How can I enable the farmer to do it in their own farms, right? And how can we really get more awareness out there, and scale it, right? This is the problem that we are trying to work on, right? The research and also, ICAR is the best, right? So, but what we are trying to do is the engineering, the coordination, the unit economics, the logistics, the entrepreneurship model, and scaling, and access to farmers and awareness creation, right? That is where I think Heartfulness Institute is focused on, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Next.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. I'm Tony Manoj from PhD agronomy scholar from GV Panth University of Agriculture and Technology.
Yes.
So I have been working on biochar since last 3 years over my PP on field on rice field cropping system.
Mm-hmm.
So recently we have come across a technology named Vera VM0042 software.
Yes.
That is a technology basically. So I would like to know how effective is it in the ground scale and how it is going to generate the carbon credits from the farmers, since it is only being considering only the agronomic practices. How can it be more effective in generating the carbon credits?
Yeah. So VM004 from Vera, it's a standard, Vera is a registry, and they've come out with the standards for measuring carbon credits from biochar, and that's VM004. However, while Vera is the industry leader in carbon credits, particularly from nature-based solution, they are not the leaders in biochar, right? You look up Carbon Standards International and you look up Puro Earth. These are 2 different registries, and they do predominantly, they started with only biochar. Now they're also doing other things, right? So CSI, I think, is the de facto standard in our opinion, right, for artisan biochar carbon credits. And Puro Earth is the de facto standard for industrial biochar carbon credits, right? And at least Vera, when VM004 came out about a year back, okay, the biochar industry, when they looked at it, they said, "Arey, log ko samajh mein bhi nahi aata hai." Like, I'm sorry, I mean, I should not say this, but let us say that the first version, okay, of Vera standard, there was a lot of not so positive remarks, right? They might have subsequently refined it. It might still become the leading standard, but let's say that they're a little late off the blocks, right? So I would recommend that you look at Carbon Standards International and Puro Earth. There's a biochar production guidelines, in CSI, it's about 50 pages long. Okay, in Puro Earth, it's 12 pages long. Very clear, in terms of what you need to do in order to achieve carbon credits, right? Still a lot of work, but I think all the details are public source, Tony. Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Raghunath. Let us take last question.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes.
Parbani.
Uh-huh.
How come the gases released during biochar production
processes be used as a source of energy, and can
Absolutely.
business model be developed from this?
Yes, absolutely, right. So in artisan biochar, okay, we forget the gases, it all burns off, and we only get biochar. Okay, and the gases are lost, the heat is lost. Whereas in industrial biochar, and that's why it becomes a chemical engineering equipment, right? Pyrolysis, gasification, pyrogasification, right? And there, all the syngases that is released, okay, it can be used as thermal energy. It can be cleaned as used in industrial application. Okay, you can get wood vinegar. There are several other possibilities that biochar is not the only output. Emissions, there is no perception problem there because zero emissions, you can scrub it all out. And the energy also can be used for heating boilers, and several other uses, right? This is where the transition from artisan biochar, which a farmer can do in their own field, to industrial biochar, where you're tapping that syngases and generating heat energy and electrical energy and so on, right? The difference here, like R.C. Agarwal sir said, it costs 20,000, 50,000 for you to really start manufacturing carbon credits and start generating biochar. Here it'll cost a few crores, right? Depending on the size and scale of your problem, depending on your availability of biomass, right? And what you're looking to do, you can either go for artisan biochar, okay, or go for industrial biochar. So syngas, so that's a science. Again, there's a lot of studies happening. It's emerging science, but syngas can definitely be used. But क्या है उनका calorific value बहुत कम होता है. It's hardly about 1100, 1200. It's called lean gas, right? So you can't use it for a whole lot of application. You cannot liquefy it. But if you have a direct line, okay, where you can deploy the use of the thermal energy, or you can flame it to produce heat then and there and use that heat. Absolutely, that's industrial biochar, but it's a bigger investment and capex outlay.
So
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raghavendran.
Yeah.
And thanks to your all colleagues. I see Anshumi responding to all the questions.
Yes.
So very efficiently. So thank you, Anshumi, for responding to very effectively. I've seen your responses, and I'm sure our colleagues from ICR institutes, from universities, they'll definitely collaborate with you, and they will raise their queries, whatever they have got. And personally, I have been benefited. Really, a lot of insights you have given. And from the comments, I can see all of our colleagues, they have also really educated. They have been really, the knowledge has been really enhanced by all these basics, the elementary things, the advanced things, what is happening in the world, and the examples which you have given. Really, it's very good insights presented by you, and you have really done a great justice for this topic, of how we can generate the high value carbon credits using small interventions, and especially the kind of intervention which you have made. By adopting that, we can really make wonders. Yes. But let me just tell you that there is not even a single university in out of our 77 universities or any institute which is not working on biochar. The only thing is to scale it up, to take it to the farmers. Right. So the different methodologies, different kind of interventions, they all have made. I have personally gone and seen small experiments, but now there is a need to take it at a national level to really make viable solutions for the farmers, so that really we can come out with some low-cost solutions. And the biggest problem of this climate change can be addressed through this. This is one of the solutions. And the conservation agriculture also, this can be helpful. For natural farming also, this can be useful. So a lot of things in which this can be a very good intervention. So thank you once again from ICR. And thank you once again on behalf of the agricultural universities to you and your team. And to Hartwellers and to Daji.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you everyone for this really fantastic participation. It's really been an honor and privilege. And I do look forward to partnering, collaborating, MOU, whatever capacity. We really look forward to being in touch. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for setting this up also, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.